you're good readable. It's just a lot of stations shipping on each other. You're good readable.
What's going on, everyone? My name is Sergeant First Class Ellis Noto with the Indiana Army National Guard, back again with another edition of the Lima Charlie podcast. I'm joined by my co-host, Sergeant Katie Bargerhuff, and today's very special guests. We've got three of them from ROTC, OCS, I guess they're all officer, right? Officer candidates and officers. We have Cadet Jose Guerrero. We have Mr. Jerry Barker, the one and only, and of course, First Lieutenant Jaylee Pineda, the only repeat guest we've ever had here on the podcast between the Not Your Average Joes and Lima Charlie. Welcome back, and welcome, guys, to the Lima Charlie podcast. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Glad to be here.
Just for clarification, that's my maiden name. It's now Browning.
Oops.
First Lieutenant Jaylee Browning. I was just repeating my lines from last time. So glad to be here. No, thank you guys so much for joining us. So your commissioning source was ROTC, right, ma'am? And then you're still in ROTC, right?
That is correct.
Where do you go to school at?
I got a school at IPY.
You're a freshman, sophomore?
Entering my senior year.
Entering your senior year in the senior ROTC program. So what motivated you to join ROTC? How did you hear about it? What made you want to do that?
So I was previously a 25 Bravo on the enlisted side. And when it was time to start promoting, starting doing boards, I was starting to be questioned on if I wanted to go officer, stay non-commissioned route on the non-commissioned route. And I talked with Mr. Barker actually, and he kind of gave me an insight on what it was to be in ROTC and to have the end state in being an officer. And I signed up for the mil science courses, attended a couple of the labs, and ended up liking it, and kind of started from there. So
you've had a positive experience as a cadet?
Absolutely, I'd say so.
And
yes.
you joined the National Guard, and then you joined ROTC afterwards, right?
Correct.
It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Now, you've done the ROTC program, and you've already commissioned. So how did the program prepare you for where you are now in the Indiana National Guard?
I would say the program was a bit more rigorous than it really is in the National Guard world, I will say, especially for the cadets that aren't prior service. I was a prior medic before, so I kind of knew how a normal drill weekend would go. And everyone was terrified to go to their first unit. They're like, we're going to do all of these. We're going to do all the PT. I'm going to have to run faster than everybody in my company. So, I mean, I would say it almost overly prepared me when it came to what to expect. Admin-wise, probably not. But when it came to the intensity of what the Army had to bring, I would say it was pretty good.
Oh, good. Okay.
So what is ROTC? What does that stand for? And then what are the different phases of ROTC? That's probably Mr. Barker question right there.
So ROTC stands for the Reserve Officer Training Corps, and it's a commissioning source for the U.S. Army. So the Army gets its officers from three locations. You've probably heard of the United States Military Academy at West Point. And then we have this thing called OCS, or Officer Candidate School, which is a measure that the military or the Army has put in place. If they need officers quick, fast, in a hurry, they can use that as a resource to get their officers. But the majority of Army officers come from the senior ROTC programs. We're on 275 college campuses across the United States with an additional 1,200 or so partnerships. So the thought process is when you graduate from high school and you bridge into secondary education and you start your degree in any degree map that you wanted to go into, criminal justice, or a STEM degree like Cadet Guerrero here and Lieutenant Browning.
No one's
Took
used
me
to
a
it.
minute. But you bridge into secondary education and you start that degree and you take a series of electives in ROTC right along with that map. And when you graduate in 4 years, you would then commission and serve in the Army as an Army officer, either in one of the components of the Army, either the active Army, the Army Reserve, or the Army National Guard.
Now, sir, you use the word senior ROTC program. Tell me more about that. Is there senior versus junior?
Well, of course, there are junior ROTC programs in high schools all over the country, and several here in this great state of Indiana. And their mission at the high school level is nothing more to motivate their cadets to become better citizens. So as you bridge into secondary education or the senior program, what we get paid to do is produce Army officers. So it's a little bit like the good lieutenant said, it's a little bit more intense when you get at that level. So the footprint here in Indiana for your soldiers, there's 6 host programs across the state. We have programs at up in Notre Dame, down at Bloomington IU, Purdue, West Lafayette, Rose-Hulman, close to Terre Haute. What's that school up there in Muncie? I can't think of it.
I'm hurt. Ball State. Hurt.
Ball State University, and of course here in Indianapolis, which is IUPUI. And then our footprint here in this area is IUPUI is one of the 275 host programs, and then we have partnerships with Butler University, Franklin University, Marion University, and of course the University of Indianapolis. So those students can participate in our program.
That's cool. So you don't have to go to that host program. You can go to one of those partnership schools, crosstown partnerships, right? And still participate in ROTC. Now, you both had kind of spoke almost about challenges, right? What are some of the challenges that each cadet will go through in each one of these phases?
Definitely the academic struggle. The kind of the stereotype of college kids are going through this. They have to study for final exams. That was one of my struggles, kind of aligning my academic studies with ROTC studies and my National Guard side, kind of like keeping that commitment well, and kind of balancing that time within those 3 kind of areas or categories was one struggle for me.
First Lieutenant Browning.
I would say I 100% agree with that. Not only education-wise, because that's a huge part of how you assess within the ROTC program, but time commitment. So there is PT, what is it, 2 or 3 times a week still?
For us, it's 3 times a week.
So PT first thing in the morning, 3 times a week. And then you have classes all day, military science labs, which are a couple hours long every week. So it's a shock of time management when you're just coming out of high school and you're just learning how to be an adult. And it is just putting you in a situation to where you have to overcome all these obstacles.
Is it the same time commitment freshman through senior year, or does it change progressively as you progress through the ranks, MS1 through MS4?
So when I went through it, time commitment, it was kind of the same because PT-wise, you still had to go to PT in the morning and you still had to attend the labs. When you do this thing called contracting, that's when you're obligated, like you have to go to it. But in your freshman or sophomore year, if you're not contracted and you're just trying to get in the program, you can kind of show up when you want to. But time commitment wise, you still have PT, you still have labs. The classes go from 1 week to 2 days a week once you get to that junior, senior level. And then it's all the out of classroom work, like preparing for labs, because once you get higher up there, you're teaching it. You're not just attending it. So it gets progressively worse, but not too much.
I don't know if anyone saw Mr. Barker's face when you said you don't really have to go to PT. I think you have to go to PT. I looked over at him.
If you're not contracted, you're not obligated to go to PT.
Well put, ma'am.
So you mentioned that there was tons of programs all across like the states, right? So what makes the Indiana National Guard like different from everybody else?
Well, one, it's the Indiana National Guard is one of the largest guards in the nation. Okay, and then the educational benefits that they offer for their soldiers are second to none. For example, they have 100% tuition for their soldiers to attend state schools here in the great state of Indiana.
Yep.
Not to mention the GI Bill that goes on top of that, and as what we call a SMP, or a simultaneous member cadet, where you're a member of the National Guard and ROTC at the same time, you're paid as a sergeant, or as an E5. You're not a sergeant E5. You're paid as an E5, and then you get an ROTC stipend of $420 a month. So as coming in as that type of cadet, you're taking one of those things away that causes people to drop out of school. The first thing is finances, So as you come in as a student cadet, you're taking finances, that problem of paying for school, off the table, And then the second reason, or that most people drop out of school, is they don't have that discipline in order to, get up and go to class and that type of thing. And that's one of the things that we look for in our cadets. And just like the good lieutenant was talking about, you really have to be a professional at managing your time and keeping your dinner plate, with small portions on it, so you can get at your toward the end of your main goal is actually getting a degree and then commissioning eventually into the Army.
Yeah, I am surprised that you can get college students up for PT.
Yes.
That's
Yes. So
Mr. Barker, you had thrown some monetary values out there a second ago, some money.
Mhm.
Let's talk about that. So if they are a contracted cadet, obligated, as Lieutenant Browning said, they'll get the cadet stipend of $420 a month.
Mhm.
They'll be paid as an E5.
Mhm.
They can get the GI Bill Select Reserve, which is it $407 a month right now. Don't roast me if that's not the correct number. The GI Bill Kicker, $350 a month.
it depends on their contract. Whatever they get in their contract will depend on what their kicker is. It ranges anywhere from $100 to just at $300 a month.
So it's safe to say that on top of the Guard paying for up to 100% of their tuition, they can make over $1,000 a month being a full-time college student.
Absolutely.
For being an ROTC and being
Yes.
in the National Guard. That's pretty cool. We talked a lot about training, and you had mentioned a moment ago, Lieutenant, that as you go up through the program, you start leading it, right? It's a cadet ran program. What are some of the leadership qualities that the program emphasizes and that you develop as a leader going through the program?
Yeah, like I said, time management is probably one of the biggest ones that you don't really get the opportunity to exercise unless you're forced into it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one that I really loved. So it was time management, organization, teamwork, because even though you're leading it, you need to learn how to delegate. When I say that people take on way too much because they think that they have to be the leader and just do everything, having a team and having a really good relationship with them and like learning how to work with your peers is one of the biggest things, because it becomes kind of a community of leaders, and especially in the Indiana National Guard is very small. So you will see each other again and you will remember those relationships. And I think that's a really good one. And like Mr. Barker said earlier, discipline, because again, working with peers at that age, tensions can rise, and having that discipline to work through any issue, especially because when you commission, you are probably one of the youngest people in your units. All of your NCOs, enlisted people, a lot of them have tons more experience and time. They've been in the Army longer than you've even thought about the Army. So knowing how to interact with different personalities is also a really good one.
Now, of course, with us being in the Guard, we have civilian jobs, right? Because we do 1 week in a month, 2 weeks in the summer. How have you found that those leadership qualities can impact and cross over to the civilian world as far as additional opportunities? Either one of you, or all three of you.
I mean, I can say that for the other side, I can tell if another person is in the military, one, just from their assertiveness. I have noticed that in the other side, I say the Army's on this side and everybody else is on the other side.
Other side, got it.
On the other side, they are definitely not as assertive with leadership skills. I mean, even managers and supervisors, I find myself talking for them or helping them make decisions just because a lot of people don't get the kind of experience you get in the military, especially on the leadership side, to make decisions and be confident about those decisions and be able to portray your intent.
Ma'am, are you telling me that the military decision-making process actually works?
It does.
Whoa.
What?
What a concept. And for anyone who's listening, who's on the other side, it is possible to come to this side. Just call your local Army
Come to
National
the
Guard
dark
recruiter.
side.
Come to Cadet Guerrero, I mean, same question. Have you found those leadership qualities are crossing over?
To kind of piggyback off of that, I think confidence would be the number one thing I would say. For example, I've been working on the civilian side the entire time I've been in the National Guard, even through college. I could touch that on that later, but Confidence is number one from like start to finish, and like in the civilian side. From interview, I'm a lot more confident during interview questions. I know when to think on the spot. During the actual job, I know how to interact with people from the manager standpoint to management standpoint to subordinates to other coworkers. A lot more confident there, and just all around feel a lot more confident.
Super cool.
So we talked about the traits that help with the civilian side, but I also know that ROTC can lead to a lot of different career paths and opportunities as well, both within the Indiana National Guard and on the civilian side. Do you have any experience with that right now? Because I know that you're about to graduate.
Yes, so my SMP unit, right now I'm within the 127th Cyber Protection Battalion, and there I've learned a lot of things, like really a lot of things relating to cybersecurity, IT, and another benefit to the National Guard. The Army will pay for certifications, and in my case, IT and cyber certifications, and kind of going through that. It's really prepared me for the civilian side, or even developing skills, or kind of like your technical skills and proficiencies inside the Army and outside. So I've really got to experience on the technical side, got to really go into depth within that. So
That's awesome. Ma'am?
I can speak a little bit on the Army side because after college, I kind of went trying to find a career within the National Guard. So ADOS orders. So it's temporary active time, usually about a year at a time. And it's really to get your feet wet in the full-time side of Army. And I actually had initially come on to full-time orders during COVID. It was right after I graduated Bullock, and I had only been out for 3 weeks, and I had a friend, Unru. I don't know if you remember Unru. She had offered me a job here and said, hey, we really need help. If you're interested, they need high-speed officers. And here I am a couple years later, and it's just opportunities in the National Guard are always there. And there's so many different positions. You can work in operations. You can work in training. You can work in the PAO. You can take pictures and videos, and it can be awesome.
Yeah, options are unlimited.
Mhm.
I went from an admin position to a photography position, and
There are so many different jobs here that even if you get bored with one, you can find an ADOS position at a whole nother unit.
PAO also has a podcast, in case you were able to take pictures of them. They do have a podcast. No, and it sounds like, Cadet Guerrero, you had mentioned, you're about to graduate in a little bit, and you're going to have 4 years of not only hands-on experience in your space, in your field, you're going to have civilian certifications, and you're going to have leadership experience, right? So at 22, 3, 4 years old, you have a lot more on your resume than your peer group. Oh, and you have no student loans.
that is correct.
You and that's
very
hard to beat
nice.
that. And ma'am, you had mentioned earlier that relationships matter, people matter, and the National Guard is small. So being able to network through the SMP, through the simultaneous membership program. So once you complete basic officer leadership course, right, Bullock, you are able to just kind of jump into those roles. That's a great way that that ROTC does that. Sir, you've been in recruiting since '88 and ROTC since '05. Have you found a similar experience?
Absolutely. To kind of piggyback on how we get these cadets ready for either the military or the Army world or the civilian life, as we take them through the process, ROTC is broken down into 2 phases or 2 courses. You have the basic course, which is comprised of your military science 1 and 2 year, which is your freshman and sophomore year, and then the advanced course, which is your military science 3 and 4 year, your junior and senior year. We call it that just in case, in some instances, we'll have people come into the program that are in grad programs. So we offer, master programs for example, like a sergeant in the National Guard that has her undergrad in criminal justice and wants to bridge into a master's program. We have the opportunities to make that person an Army officer. So if they were coming in to do a 2-year master's program, they can come in the advanced portion of ROTC because basic training has covered the first 2 years of ROTC. They would actually be academically aligned, be able to start as a cadet, advanced course cadet, and then bridge in to the commissioned world.
He's trying to recruit me if anyone hasn't figured that out yet.
But to piggyback off what both of these said, so as you come into the program as a basic course cadet, we train you on a just like they do Army training. You crawl, walk, run type of phase. So as you come in as a freshman level cadet, there's not a lot of time commitment, even though it's only 7 hours a week. It's just the time of the day. Of course, we start our day off with physical fitness training, and we have to do that before the class day begins. 6:45 is what time physical fitness training would start, and that's 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then you have an hour of class once a week, which is 50 minutes, and then we have a 2-hour lab. So that's what you're expected to do. So you just show up and go through the process of that as a basic course cadet. And then once you bridge into the advanced portion of the program, that's when we put you in your run phase, and we start introducing you to those things that you called the military decision-making process, how to receive the 5-paragraph operations order, how to decipher the order, rewrite the order, and deliver the order to your element. So that's how, and it's a process. And like Sergeant Noto said, it's a cadet-led program. So as a basic course cadet, you're either a cadet private, as you bridge into the advanced portion of the program. As an MS3 cadet, you're a cadet NCO, and then eventually, as you hit your senior year or your MS4 year, you're a cadet officer in the program. And that's how we develop these cadets into Army officers. So, and that's going to go back to your original question. That's going to prepare you not only for the Army, but as you go into a civilian field as well, because you're still eventually you're going to be a leader in that profession, and then you're going to be leading people, not only managing people, but leading people. If that makes sense.
I will say, the way we spoke about it, it makes it sound really overwhelming when you first start. So I just wanted to assure everybody, their first 1 and 2 year, course-wise, it's really light. So they learn the rank structure, the warrior ethos, the Army song. It's all very basic level stuff. The time commitment is still there, but when we talk about course load, it's not bad at all. They really do ease you into it.
It sounds like there's a lot of important skills and knowledge that you impress upon these cadets through the program. Is there any other important skills or knowledge that these cadets are learning?
Well, I think the lieutenant had hit it, the nail on the head on the ability to work with people as a team. All right, and developing that, understanding that you're as strong as your weakest team member, or as fast as your slowest team member, and then that that builds what he was talking about, that confidence level. So as you bridge into whatever career you choose to do, both of those things are going to be assets to any organization.
Very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So, within the Indiana National Guard, like ROTC program, when you're in college, balancing the physical fitness aspect, the mental health aspect of the course load and the stress and working with people and the academic performance of it all, is there anything that, like, do the cadets help support each other? Is it the instructors that are helping support you to carry on? Where does your support come from to push you through?
So a lot of the cadets each year they kind of get together. They honestly become friends outside of ROTC. We get invited to events or even work together for volunteer events outside of ROTC. And we kind of become our own family within each other. And when we are when we're in the labs, where we're out on an FTX, on a field training exercise, we really help each other out. We kind of burn things down to hey, this is kind of similar to in a workplace environment. This is work, and we separate work from family and work from with friends outside. And that separation, the ability to work through that together, it's very critical in ROTC.
Yeah.
Anything to add? Yes. Anything?
up.
Yeah. No, I actually recently have referred to ROTC kind of being a fraternity because
Mm.
you guys do everything together. You see each other almost every single day of the week. If you see each other outside of class, you gravitate towards each other. A lot of the MS classes within themselves become like their own groups because they have the same assignments, same projects. A lot of them, not a lot of them, but some of them have the same majors. So you kind of become a family because you guys just go through the suck all the time together.
I can definitely relate. We've talked a lot about the program, but we actually haven't talked about how to get involved in the program, what the qualifications are. So, what are the qualifications to join ROTC? Can I join if I'm not in college? What do I have to be doing? Part-time school, online school?
Well, obviously, if we're driving toward the simultaneous membership program here. So generally, if you're a member of the Indiana National Guard, you're pretty much qualified to come into the program. Okay, so just like when you enlisted in the Army National Guard, we still have to take you through the administrative qualification piece. So one, in order to be an Army officer, you have to be a U.S. citizen. Okay. So that's one of the things that you have to be. Now you can participate if you're here on a permanent resident
Green card?
Yes, green card. In the process of applying for your citizenship, age requirements. In order to commission, you cannot have reached your 32nd birthday. Okay, so you have to commission before you turn 32. So we'll take a look at that. Dependency, marriage, those administrative type things. And then you'll actually have to go through a Chapter 2 physical of 40-501 again. So it's an enlistment or induction type physical. Don't have to go to the MEPS, okay?
No.
I tell you what, I did 23 years in the Army, and my worst 2 days in the Army were the day I joined the Army and the day I left for training, spending them at the Indianapolis MEPS. We might want to cut that out. But anyway, those are the basic qualifications in order to become an Army officer. So.
I'm really glad that the co-host, Staff Sergeant First Class Schweitzer, who's an Indianapolis MEPS guidance counselor, wasn't here today. He's writing contracts, but shouts out Indy MEPS.
Well,
So you mentioned those qualifications. How many classes do I need to be in at a time, though? Can I be part-time? Can I be online? Is there distance learning?
That's a great question, Sergeant Noto. You have to be a full-time student in order to participate in ROTC. And what constitutes a full-time student? In an undergrad degree map, it's 12 credits a semester. In a graduate program, it's 9 credits a semester. So.
I wrote that down for her. I'm going to write some notes.
Yeah.
I'll put an email chain together.
She'll
I'll
be
just
going to
watch the
IUPUI
podcast
starting in
later.
the
It's
fall.
fine.
And you had mentioned, Mr. Barker, that really you only need those last 2 years if you already have basic and AIT, right? Because that
Right.
IADT knocks out your first, your MS1, MS2 years. So if you're going for that master's program, like my esteemed co-host,
No.
or if you are, you've already got some credits before joining the military, you're still eligible to commission through ROTC
Yes.
as long as you have those. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So that's what we do. We have to academically align you. So if you're one of those, if you've been to basic training, you're able to go into the advanced portion of ROTC. So wherever your degree map is where we have to drop you down to. Okay. So if you're coming in with no college, we have to put you in the freshman level class in ROTC. And yes, I almost equate it, like the lieutenant said, it's almost like a pre-basic training task list. I mean, you're learning things like, customs and courtesies, rank structure, land navigation, and we try to make it interesting, and keep your attention on the instruction, but more so we use you as a resource for our progression type cadets that come in to help them and learning drill and ceremony and that type of thing. Does that make sense?
It does, sir. And we're using a lot of terms like progression. What is an SMP cadet? What does SMP stand for, and what does that mean for a soldier?
S&P stands for simultaneous membership program. So that means you're a member of a reserve component of the Army, such as the National Guard and ROTC at the same time. So in order for you to go into that program, you have to be accepted into ROTC by the program, and the National Guard has to agree for you to participate in ROTC.
Do you
So-
still have to go to drill?
You do still
Oh,
have to go to
that's
drill.
unfortunate for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
That's-
Well,
What do you do at drill? I mean, it's different though, right? So what do you
Yes.
do as an S&P contracted cadet?
So I guess it does depend unit to unit, but for example, for me, it's spent about half the time I'm shadowing my lieutenant. I'm learning in our use case under cyber, learning leadership capabilities or planning process within cyber operations. And then the other time is either studying, learning new technical skills, being immersed in what they call the cyber operations, kind of like the realm of it. Under that cloud, so it's split between those two.
How about yourself, ma'am? How was your S&P experience?
So mine was a very atypical S&P experience when it came to the traditional drilling side. So when I was first coming through, we had this unit called the RSDO for ROTC cadets in their MS1 and 2 year to kind of prep them for advanced camp. So we would do training such as land nav, and we had every MS1 and 2 in the state over at Atterbury. So I had spent my MS2 year there, and I got asked to be cadre. So I actually spent my S&P time as a cadet in charge of other cadets, teaching land nav and other things.
And lieutenants still get lost. I love
Hey,
it.
I can tell you, I did land nav every month for 3 years. Once I got to advanced camp, I was like, Psh,
Got it.
I'm good.
Mr. Barker, you had used the term contracted cadet. When a guard soldier is an S&P and they contract into the program, does that mean they're going to have to commission as a guard officer?
No. There's pathways where you can commission as an active duty officer as well, and go through what we call the accessions process. Depending on what your status is as an S&P cadet. For example, the good lieutenant here was on what we call a guaranteed reserve forces duty contract with us, and that meant she was on a 3-year dedicated guard scholarship where she had to actually commission into the Army National Guard.
Okay.
Cadet Guerrero here, he did a GRFD non-scholarship option where he left active duty on the table. So if he wanted to compete for the active Army, he can do so through our accessions process.
So to clarify, the Army National Guard is still paying for your undergrad. You're still getting all those stipends we talked about, and you still have the opportunity to compete to become potentially an active duty Army officer. Is that right?
That is correct.
That sounds pretty awesome. That's a great opportunity. If someone does take a scholarship or they're non-scholarship, is there what kind of commitment are they looking at once they commission as an Army officer?
Well, their enlisted contract. Once they commission, their enlisted contract will be voided out, and they'll do another 8-year MSO or military service obligation. Okay, so it's a statutory obligation. So anyone that goes into the military, once you sign on the dotted line, you have an 8-year MSO. Contractually will depend on what type of contract you had with ROTC will determine on how long you have to serve. For example, if Cadet Guerrero decided that he wanted to go in the active Army, he would do a new MSO or 8-year MSO, but his obligation in the Army would only be 3 years. Okay, versus the good lieutenant here, she was on a guaranteed reserve forces duty, dedicated guard scholarship. She has to compete. She has to complete that MSO the full time in the Indiana National Guard. So her commitment is 8 years in the National Guard.
We got to do a better job naming that scholarship. It's too long.
Yeah.
That's too long of a.
GRFD
Well,
is what we
yeah,
call
yeah,
it.
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah.
No one
So-
says that whole thing.
Yeah.
So with the ROTC programs in Well, I guess you as well. With your experience, did the group seem really diverse? And I know that the Army brings a lot of different backgrounds. How was that experience for both of you?
I could start off with
Yeah,
that one.
sure.
So,
Okay.
one piece that the lieutenant had to say was personalities. So we,
Mm-hmm.
and for example, in my class, we are a bunch of different personalities in there, and we did butt heads at times, especially during labs and FTX, and that kind of like I'd say for the first 3 or 4 weeks, it was a problem, but we kind of set things aside, kind of knew what we had to do, and we resolved that portion of it with kind of the diversity of our group. It's very diverse, and it's kind of caused to have like different ways people solve issues, being under pressure. But I'd say in the end, it kind of like I don't know, it balances each other. Everyone balances each other out, and it even helps us kind of see what in their eyes what it needs to have from A to B. But yeah, I don't know. In our case, it's really helped us out.
Yeah, I mean, I want to start by saying like I was with a great group of people. However, if you're just looking at a snapshot of my graduating class, again, it's being in the Army, it's always going to be majority men. And then, so I think we only had about 4-ish females out of our, I think, 18 that may have commissioned. It was at the end of COVID, so we didn't even see each other in person. I'm trying to remember who was all in my class.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was crazy. But so there are always going to be way less women in anything you do in the Army. And then for people of color, I think there were about 3 of us out of 18. So representation wise, it was a little low, but the more people I meet, the more I see people of color and women joining the ROTC program. I mean, I have a private at my unit who's already interested, and she is of color and a woman, and she is an amazing person. I can't wait to introduce her to Mr. Barker when we come back from our
I
MOB.
can't either.
Yeah, no, growing numbers are always good. It's taken a second, but I'm seeing people come down the pipeline that I'm really looking forward to. And, that diversity, it really brings a lot to the community and the Army and our family that we have. Every background is super important for us to create that really welcoming and diverse way of thinking. So that's awesome. That's great to hear.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. I think I'm just listening. That's a great statement. What is your most memorable moment from being in the National Guard, ROTC, or just being in the Guard?
Man, that one is a rough one.
I wrote it
I don't know,
myself.
I have to think.
not to be that wasn't a pessimistic statement, but I've had a lot of good experiences. I enjoy working with all of my kind of counterparts in the ROTC program, and learning a lot from the recently graduated MS4 class. My favorite part, I'd say, like recently, just talking ROTC, was this past recent FTX. Kind of a background on me, I'm a very shy, reserved person, and entering ROTC, it was really hard on me, kind of getting used to the planning process, the confidence level. But this past FTX, it was kind of like something to prove to myself, like, hey, can I do this? And working through those each situation lanes, in those lanes, I kind of proved to myself, like, hey, I can do this. I can work with person X, person Y. I can lead this troop. I can coordinate. And a lot of that aspect was kind of like I just felt with joy. I kind of, was a little emotional, but that piece was kind of very positive for my mental health and, I don't know, overall with my motivation with the Army.
That's pretty cool.
Mine
Yeah.
was actually a really long time ago. Back when I was enlisted in the 68 Whiskey AIT, we were there for a long time. So I was away from home for the first time, 18 years old. I was away for like 7 months, and it was honestly, I think, one of the most fun and terrible times I never want to have again. But it was something that I'll never forget because, I mean, it's the first time you really experience the Army, and it's the first time you really like build those relationships and like experience that camaraderie. Because I mean, what really keeps you in the Army most of the time is the people, men and women right next to you. So that was I think because it was my first experience and it was so like life changing. That's my favorite.
You're telling me you didn't love Joint Base San Antonio?
I did love San Antonio. It's a good post.
Riverwalk is pretty cool. I was down there for
Well,
AIT as well, for my very real MOS of being a veterinary food inspection specialist. 68 Romeo. Shouts out to all 10 of us.
Never heard that.
It's a real job. Look it up. It got a YouTube video. Mr. Barker, you spent 24 years in the Army. I mean, what's been your most memorable experience in the military as a whole?
Well, I tell you what, right now, speaking right now is commissioning day, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So every year, I'm going into my 18th year at IEPUI. So watching the transformation from people like this young lady sitting next to me, going from a MS1 level cadet to serving as a lieutenant in the Army, and watching them walk across the stage and getting pinned with that bar, it really does something to you. And I try to reflect back to the first time that we met and we actually talked, and then watching them grow up in the program. That's my best memories. So.
All right, well, we got to ask the recruiter this question. If someone was considering ROTC, what's some advice that you would give them?
Well, I mean, you know, the biggest thing is what you want to study, okay? And both of these young folks could tell you that you're going to spend most of your time in ROTC in your academic program, okay? So one, what's your passion? What is it you want to do in terms of a degree map, okay? And the second thing is where you want to go to school, because that's where you're going to spend most of your time. I always tell you know, folks that come in and sit down and talk to me, ROTC programs change, leadership changes, those types of things. So you know, you include it in your decision-making process, but you want to lean hard on where you want to go to school. So, and what you want to study. And then if you're not sure, and I break down an applicant in three areas. You have the top 20% or 20% of them, I call them Rambos, you know? They know this is what they want to do. There's no question about it that this is something they you know, that they've been dreaming of for years. And then on the other side of the curve, you have those folks that have no intention of serving into the Army. So they come in and they use ROTC as a gym credit or whatever, an elective credit to fill up a schedule. And then we have the middle 60% that I call fence sitters. And this is because ROTC is an open enrollment program, it's possible for you to come in, and I always use the analogy of dipping your toe down in the water before you take the plunge. So you can come in and kind of try it out and see if this is something you want to do. And it gives us as cadre an opportunity to you know, kind of assess you to see if you got what it takes to be like this young lady right here or this young man. So and if it's a good fit, then we look at, you know, one of the 50 different routes that you could do as a cadet in ROTC, and which course of action works best for you. So this is a little bit different than, you know, joining the National Guard where you meet, you know, a Sergeant Noto, and a couple of weeks later you're at MEPS and enlisting in the Guard. This process could take up to 2 years. So just depending on where you're at in that process. So my biggest advice is those three things. So.
Do you guys have any advice?
I do want to agree about the degree path, because I had chosen one of the hardest degrees. And again, I am now full-time military and I am not using it at all. I majored in biology, and it was, especially those last 2 years, was rough. So really think about your future and what's realistic for you and what you actually really want to do, because I could have majored in something way easier, because I really used my degree as a stepping stone to becoming an Army officer and my career in the Army. So yeah, just really think about your degree path, and then just know you can do it. Like it's gonna suck. You're gonna be stressed out. You're gonna question everything you've ever thought about in your life, but you'll get through it and you'll become an officer and you'll be better for it.
Cybersecurity is an easy degree, right?
Yes. So one thing I want to just finally like emphasize on is with time management. There's a lot of diverse people that kind of have like outside things with ROTC. For example, part-time, full-time job. For me, I work a full-time job and I'm still in ROTC, and it is possible. There's other people that are busier than myself that either volunteer, they're a mentor, they still have a full-time job. I just wanted to emphasize that it is possible to manage your time around ROTC and your academic studies all at the same time to kind of have, I don't know, a more promising future. But at the same time, I could argue the other way where you can just focus on ROTC since a lot of people are on the OML structure, that they want to get the most points for active duty and they want to focus more with ROTC and their school time. So it's very flexible, in my opinion.
You said something about money. I hear allegedly that you can get $10,000 extra if you get a GRFD scholarship. Throwing it out there.
A year?
$10,000 a year for room and board,
That's true.
and then
Yes.
$1,200 a year for books. Not that I would.
That's what
Yeah.
he meant by non-scholarship. He doesn't get the extra $5,000 a semester for room and board, but I did.
For
Come back.
me, I go through the National
I
Guard.
got paid to go to school. It was glorious.
For me, I rely on the National Guard supplemental grant, and I guess you can explain that a little bit more, Sarnoto, but it's a very good opportunity that the Indiana National Guard and the state of Indiana has to offer. But
Mr. Barker's recruiting everyone today. He's getting at least 2 leads, and I love it. No, that's great. Yeah, like you said, Cadet Guerrero, I mean, the NGSG and the FTA will pay for up to 100% of your college, and they've changed FTA and NGSG now to pay for, or NGSG to pay for part of private school too. So there's really there's so many opportunities out there for our guardsmen. We asked, one piece of advice you'd offer to someone thinking about ROTC, but what about one piece of advice to someone who's thinking about just joining the military as a whole?
I think if you're thinking about it, you should do it. It's not something you'll regret. It is something that will make you grow as a person. It'll teach you more than you've ever thought it could, and you'll meet some of the most amazing people.
Thank you. Thank you.
I guess you count.
Mr. Barker, I know you spent a long time in recruiting, even more than me. What is one piece of advice you'd offer to someone who's thinking about joining the military?
Well, the military has a lot to offer. Okay, and I generally break it down into 3 areas. What you're looking for. Obviously, there's service to country. I mean, that's one thing you can do. The other couple things is either skill training or adventure. When I graduated from Lawrence North High School way back in 1981, I think they let me graduate personally. I think they to get me out of there, but as far as continuing my education at the time, that didn't interest me. What interested me was adventure type training. So I enlisted as an 11 Bravo airborne guy, and I got to go jump out of an airplane. So that was pretty cool to me. And as I was growing up in the Army, I started realizing the opportunities for education. In the Army's paid for 2 of my master's degrees and my undergrad. So I always look at the Army as a tree. I mean, you start off as this sapling, and there's all kinds of ways that you can branch out into. Who thought, back in 2020 that you'd be sitting in a room with me doing a podcast?
Again.
So it's there's a lot of opportunities, and of course the skill training thing, if that's your thing. I mean, there's 150 different jobs that you can go into to obtain a skill and get paid while you're doing it. So
Shouts out Army.
yes.
Cadet Guerrero. What's one piece of advice you'd offer to someone who's thinking about joining the military?
So I have 2 things. One thing isn't really related to, well, a little bit, but is the family aspect of it. And I know you hit up on it a little bit. Being able to see the same people again is very, very critical. And what I mean by that is when you first get to know somebody, you'll learn their learning styles. You get to know them personally on a personal level. You'll get to know how you work with them, and with that existing knowledge from before, let's say 4 years later, you get to see them in the same unit. They're now in a leadership position, and then and there, you already know how they learn, how you talk to them, and how you work with them. So being able to jumpstart that, you get to go on a mission quicker. You get to go on a training plan a lot easier. It'll go a lot smoother. And that's the experience I've seen so far just within the Indian National Guard. Secondly, with my piece of advice is, if you know you want to join the Army, my piece of advice is to analyze all the options you have to join the Army. For example, with like the SMP program, if you're like 16, 17 years old, 18, you can join the Indiana National Guard as enlisted and then move to ROTC or OCS in that route. Or if you just want to go enlisted, there's multiple ways to be enlisted. Or, well, I guess there's really only one way. But
Multiple jobs?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. Thank you. And specifically, like if you're already in college, there's a couple ways in joining ROTC. One that I didn't know that I learned recently was you can sign a contract to be enlisted, and from there you can contract to ROTC to have the SMP option. Is that correct? Sorry, Noto.
09 Romeo.
Yes,
that's a real thing.
So that's an option, and it's a very good opportunity there because you get to be an SMP directly instead of being enlisted, and you'll get to learn kind of both aspects of enlisted and officer in one, which is a great opportunity. But there's multiple ways in doing things and getting to know the benefits in it and taking advantage of what the Army has to offer.
I know for Mr. Barker said there's so many ways to skin a cat, right? There's so many routes to commission and to get the most out of the military. Anything else you guys want to add?
Thanks for having me.
Hey, I'm so glad
Yeah.
we could finally make this happen.
I know it took a minute. Just for those who don't know, I was on this podcast as soon as I commissioned about 3 years ago is when I first came on here with him, and it's great coming back and answering kind of the same questions but having way more experience and advice to offer.
I got writer's block, all right? I just use the same questions over him. I'm sorry about that. Won't happen again. See you again in 3 years. No, thank you all so much for coming on the Lima Charlie podcast. This has been so informative. I know that our listeners will be able to learn more about the opportunities available through ROTC and SMP of the National Guard. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment. Lima Charlie out.
All jets, a lot of stations, shipping on each other.